We don't build armies the same way we used to. And we certainly don't play the game the way we used to. So let me ask you, why are you still building terrain the same old way? Find out a new way to build terrain today on Tactical Terrain. Welcome back to Tactical Terrain. As always, my name's Eric, and this is Brandon Grant. He is our guest of honor here on Taco Tuesday because what he's done is quite remarkable. That name sound familiar to you? It should if you've been listening to Signals from the Frontline, because this gentleman has won not one, but two major events in the last 5 months using nothing more than a Dark Angels CAD. You can see the army pictured there right in front of him. Real simple setup, and he's done extremely well with this particular army. So he's inspired us to use his ideas and build some Dark Angels terrain. In addition to just not only building Dark Angels terrain, we're going to go over some of the previous concepts we talked about, using layers to create detail, but we're also going to go over some new topics, and that is how to use paint to expand upon what we've done with those layers and some of the painting techniques that I use, especially what I use as a color down method. We'll go over that in greater detail. So Brandon, this is our Tactical Terrain salute to you. Alright, so here's my lovely painting station. Let's take a look at the stencils that I used to make our terrain first. We're going to start with our basic layer. Ooh, Gothic Argus. We got it nailed. So proportion-wise, this is 9.5, but purpose-wise, we kind of get an F in this, one of our 3 Ps of terrain building. As you can see, our little blood letter is not getting a whole lot of cover save from these gargantuan windows. That's okay. We've got these detail windows to go right behind them. They look something like this. Ah, there they are. So a little extra detail. This is some internet search. We got the little wings there on the side to give it the Dark Angel look. Apparently both Red Wings and Cypher give you wings. You can also see that our little blood letter here is going to get a little bit more cover. When you combine the two, look at that. We got some nice layering going on. If you look at the eagle, see those little fillery little pieces? Yeah. With the yellow layer right behind it, it gives it a little more strength. If you just left them as is, they'll probably break off by probably turn 3 of your first game. So it's very good to have that. For added panache, we're going to add this top layer. This layer was inspired to me by the actual codex, some of the artwork that they have in the kind of the edges of the codex, and that's some of the things to add to it. Alright, let's get into it. So here again is our window layer. This is our middle layer. So I'm going to give it a quick coat of a what approximates as Caliban green. What I have here is the detail layer of the windows. That's done in sort of a bone type color. And then last but not least, we've got another layer on the back, so just in case anybody gets behind us, that the layer is good. And then look at that, we've got this, our top layer, in a simple light gray pattern. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually paint each of these layers separately. And imagine, as I talked before, we're going to do this in a color down method. What that means is I base coat the models in each of these layers in a light color, usually the top of the food chain when it comes to the color palette, and then I'm going to add darker colors into the recesses. Mostly this has to do with because, well, the size and scope of the projects. You know, normally when you're doing your models, you've been told by the GWA start with a dark color, give it a wash, and then gradually add lighter colors through edge highlighting. That really doesn't work on these, especially if, please don't use your GW or your P3 or Vallejo points to do base coats. You're going to go broke. What I'm doing here is instead I've base coated this with Behr paints. Not raw Behr. These are paints that I simply got from Home Depot. And what I've done here is I've added this light coloring. It's actually called Burnt Umber. This is one of my favorites. Actually, all 3 colors we're going to be using today from the airbrush are my 3. And I use these on buildings. I use these on rocks, almost any terrain project for weathering. So what I'm doing here with the Burnt Umber is I'm just applying along the edges of the window. It doesn't need to be even. Actually, the less even, the better. It gives it more of a natural look. Alright, let's get all those edges in there. And I'm doing kind of a wide area. I'm not really getting my Michelangelo on at this point because I'm going to be adding more colors, and that's where I need to be a little more precise. But this Burnt Umber really is a killer color and really helps with getting that kind of bone feel going in. The other key thing is with this Burnt Umber, as we're going to see on the next layer, is that I'm not just getting the regular opaque, but I'm getting what's called transparent burnt umber. Also, all three colors that I'm using for the airbrush are transparent colors. What does that mean? You may also hear this in airbrush terms called candy colors as well. Those are usually applied to your wild greens and blues and purples. I'll use those in later episodes. The key difference is these are basically airbrush versions of glazes, so they're highly transparent. If you were to make your own using, let's say, a GW paint, you'd use 1 part GW paint and 5 parts Lahamian medium. If you're using P3 paints, don't mix Lahamian with P3 paints. Try to get the P3 equivalent to the mixing medium, which they do sell. You always want to match whatever brand of paints that you want to use. Make sure you use the same mixing medium so they mix together properly. But me, I'm a lazy bastard, so I'm using the pre-mixed airbrush. So you can see here, got a little blotchy here, but you know what, that kind of adds to the ruined effect. Usually not. There we go. Our next color, transparent from Creatix. This is dark brown. This is especially awesome for rocks. When I did a project, I had a guy ask, I want terrain to match the Frontline Gaming Fat Mat, the Alpine mat, and it has those rocky outcroppings. At first glance, this looks like black rocks with some light dry brushing, and I kept doing it, and it just never looked right. When I started applying some of this dark brown into the recesses, that really matched it much better. So what I'm doing here is I'm still following the outline of each of these windows, but instead of just doing these wide sections like I did with the burnt umber, I'm going with the dark brown, keeping a thin line so it's just as it approaches the edge. So if you're working from the outside in, you get the layers of burnt umber and gradually getting towards the dark brown. Just really focusing on these thin edges. Thin is better. Again, it doesn't need to be perfectly even. You're just trying to get the illusion of wear and tear. And being these are also transparent colors, the initial base coats from the Behr paint is coming through. Why are you using Behr paints? For one thing, it is a primer and paint in one. So that does a great job of sealing the foam. Foam is incredibly absorbent and just drinks the paint as you're painting on it. So it gives me a great starting point. So I'm just switching layers here and go back to our green layer. There we are. And do the same thing all over again. Hit those edges. There we go. So that's one reason. Secondly, it's readily available and it's very cost effective. What about airbrushing those Behr paints? No, don't do it in your little airbrush like I got here. What I do this for larger projects. For example, when I did my 2 GT level events, Scorched Earth Open and the Rattler Cup, I had to do terrain for 30, 40 tables. Yeah, I used a Wagner powder painter. We'll show some more techniques on that later. It's basically great for applying paint really fast. And then go back in it with your airbrush. Okay, looks like I ran out of a little paint. Quick refill. Gotta love paying attention to the camera, not paying attention to what I'm painting. There we go. So using these particular colors is really helpful. It gets the colors to come through. Here's the dark gray, and as I mentioned before with that project when I was trying to match the Alpine, a lot of people, when they see the dark grays, they immediately just gravitate to blacks and whites, but adding a little brown punches things up quite a bit. If you've ever seen on Sci-Fi Channel, they got this makeup show. It's one of these competition reality games shows called Face Off. And one of the judges, she was the lead makeup person for Ed Wood, which was a Johnny Depp movie filmed entirely in like film noir black and white. And they explained to one of the contestants the secret to that, even though it's supposed to look like a black and white film, they used a lot of browns to get those sepia tones to really make some of those transitions pop. We're doing the same thing here. So a little bit of add of these, just particularly this dark brown that we've got here, really adds a little bit of punch to the grays and adds a little more dimension. Yeah, nice to get my arm in the way. Here we go. So now we can see all the layers coming together. Now this last color coming in is transparent black. If you're new to airbrushing or you're afraid of airbrushing, this is the best place to start. Transparent black, and the airbrush that I'm using here is just an Anthem 355 from Badger, which sounds all impressive, but anybody who knows anything about airbrushes know that's the Hobby Lobby special that everybody gets with the 40% off coupon. It's great for projects like this. Yeah, I have a fancier airbrush for doing models and for extreme detail. Really not needed on this particular project, and this is a great place to start. simple with a transparent black, I can do all kinds of things. So right now I've got all these like burn marks and I've added those to the dark brown. I can do, and as you can see here, I'm going to add a little more shading. That area behind the windows from that top layer, I want to add a little bit of darkness. You can see it's not, a lot of translucency I'm still getting. If I want to get a little darker, I just let the airbrush build up the paint in those particular areas. And then you can also do a lot of cracks, you can do burns, you can do water stains. Here's an example. Here we go, get a little tight. And I got a little crack. Alright, what I'm going to do now is extend the crack starting within the line. You notice I start where the line ended. Real simple vine pattern. There we go. Let's do it again on the other side. There, got a little blotch there. Great. Make it a node where the branch is off. More going on there. A little bit of practice here. And then I'm going to add maybe some cables. Yeah, there we go. Because these are going to look like mechanical cables. Yeah, they didn't quite come out as good as I like, but you get the point. The point is that when you look through the window, you're going to see a little more details, not just glaring green splatter. Looking at it right there. Alright, let's get our layers together. Let's put this together. Look at that. As you notice, I also paint the layers separately, because when I do that, all these edges will get painted together and I have to go back with an X-Acto knife and cut them open, and more often than not I end up chipping the paint. So there we go. Nice weathering job, real simple airbrush, not a lot of artistic technique. Try this at home, let me know how it works out. Thanks for watching.
Again, for watching. Remember, as always, Frontline Gaming sells Games Workshop products at up to 25% off retail every day. You can also pick up some cheap models in our secondhand shop. Some of the gems are quite rare, and sometimes they're fully painted. All of this is available at www.frontlinegaming.org. Do you want to see Tactical Terrain live? Come see me at Nova Open 2016. Tickets still remaining for any of my 5 classes. We're doing 2 on terrain, 1 advanced terrain building class, and 2 on display boards. Again, novaopen.com this year, Labor Day weekend.